my youngest daughter Stephanie, my youngest granddaughter Zoe, my son-in-law Michael, I love him to death. This is Zoe now, Stephanie's youngest. This is me about 3 years ago. My great-granddaughter Nyasha. This is my newest granddaughter, Nyla, the one I told you got the. This is my mother. Maybe about 5 years before she passed. She was 88 when she passed.
Wow.
Strong as a bull. This is my second youngest granddaughter, Crystal Holiday. She'll be 13 next month.
Oh.
This is her brother Robert, who is like 28 now. My favorite picture. This is my oldest daughter Cecilia. She passed with ovarian cancer a couple years ago.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is my middle daughter, Renee, her husband Walter, and their youngest daughter, Crystal again. This is my second cousin, Daniela, my cousin Yvonne's daughter. She's a nurse at Rex Hospital in North Carolina, Raleigh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it.
Oh, lovely picture.
That's it. That's my favorite, one of my favorite pictures of Cecilia. She loved my grandson. She loved Robert. I used to tell him when he was little like that, you know, your grandma's favorite grandson. Oh, no, there's not another one like you. So sister got mad at him. She's older than him. She said, you know why you're her favorite grandson? He said, yeah, because she said so. I said, no, you're her only grandson. He was so mad. He was so mad.
Oh.
Yeah, because he was too little to understand that he didn't have any male cousins. You know? She busted his little bubble. He tells her that now. He said, but I'm still her favorite grandson. I said, that's right. I don't have any others. I have a great-grandson. Nyasha has a brother, Tylee. He's the one that is the genius, and he's the math champion of Georgia for his age group. Yeah, he's so silly though. Yeah. So that's about it.
Whenever you're ready, it's all good.
Okay, good. All right. Shall I look at the camera to begin?
You don't have to.
I don't have to. All right. I can
Just
look
be
at you
natural, just like you've been talking all day.
Right?
Natural all day. That's all day. Okay, it's August 6, 2010, and I'm Dave Hayward, the coordinator of Touching Up Our Roots, which is Georgia's LGBT History Project initiative. And we're here today with Mary Louise Covington.
Hi.
Hey, Mary Louise.
Hey, David.
Who's a veteran activist. So we're going to go back to like your early life. And so tell me, would you be willing to say the day you were born?
Sure, 1943, January 18th,
January 18th, 1943. Okay.
Queens, New York.
Queens, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And tell me about your parents.
My mother was born and raised in Hamlet, North Carolina, which is down at the Petey River. She's Lumbee and Black. She's now passed. My dad was Cherokee and Black. And he also was passed. There were 6 of us. I'm the oldest. Well, my mother had me when she was 24. And that was late for a woman having her first child back in the day. And she had 5 other children. I have 2 brothers and 4 girls. 2 of my sisters live in North Carolina. Then one sister lives in New York, and 1 brother's in New York, and 1 is in North Carolina. Oodles of grandchildren, and I have 3 great grandchildren now.
How did your parents come to New York?
My parents came to New York. Well, my mother came to New York basically because they were so poor. In the South, we're talking about the South, over 60-something years ago. So my mother was pregnant with me. She came to New York to live. Her aunt brought her to New York. And my great aunt Della, who was my grandfather's sister, she brought my mother to New York, and my great aunt Della was a member of the Garvey movement. And she was what they call an every Thursday girl. And she was a domestic worker. And every Thursday girl meant that she had Thursdays off. She lived with the families that she worked for, so she would be off Thursday. But what it meant was she had to cook dinner for them for Thursday and put it up. She had to be in the house by 10 o'clock. And so that's how a lot of black women and poor Irish women made a living back in the day.
So what is the Garvey movement? What is that?
Which was Marcus Garvey, the Back to Africa movement. So my great aunt Della was a part of that movement. She, like a lot of black people back in the day, was looking for a way to survive under the oppression, the racism, which, people think racism, it's just a catchword. It's not. It dictates how people can live, where they can live, what kind of jobs they can get, what kind of education they can get, and in some places, what streets they can walk down, If you want to join a service, what part of the service would you be in? And how, you could be well educated and still, like both my mother's brothers were educated men. My mother's brother, Uncle John, he was a functioning alcoholic. He was, and he used to tell us, I was President Eisenhower's cook. I was President Eisenhower's cook. So we, what do we know? And sure enough, it turned out he actually was President Eisenhower's cook. And how I found out is one night he was talking about it, and he was in his cups, and he started crying because he was an educated man, and that was the only job they would let him have. They wouldn't let him do anything else but, do all the grunge work that white soldiers should not do.
So he was his cook during World War II?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I don't even think President Eisenhower knew his name.
Yeah.
Why would he?
Yeah. Now you said you consider yourself to be just as much Native American as African American.
Right.
So, but when you were growing up in New York, I assume that people didn't identify you as Native American.
No, not at all. And really, tell you the truth, I really didn't know that we were Native until I was much older.
Okay.
It's like 17. I understood, my mother would say, there's Indian in our family, they're Lumbee, your father's Cherokee. But it was sort of like in passing, it didn't, and then as I got older, 15, 16 years old, I understood that,
Uh-huh.
So that was okay, and it made me feel like, okay, I wasn't that different. Like when people, where did you get those eyes? Where did you get that color skin? So I had a way to say.
Because you had blue eyes.
Well, they changed.
Okay.
So I had a way of like, it has to be that part of the family. Of course there's no blue-eyed natives, but what did I know coming up?
Yeah.
So. But my mother, she really knew the history. She didn't talk about it. She didn't talk about her history. She didn't tell us things about growing up. She didn't, because it was too painful.
Mm.
So when I became, my mother was an orphan.
Mm.
So when I became about 15 years old, I really wanted to know. I really wanted to know, where did she come from? Where did my father come from? Yeah, she wouldn't talk about it. So I started doing research, and my mother knew two things about her family. She knew where she was born, and she knew her grandfather's name. And she knew her father and mother's name, but that was it. So I started doing our family history. So I've been doing it off and on, I guess since I was about 15. And, but she never wanted to go back home. She never, she's like, no, make sure, when I die, I'm not buried down there. And, the family church is there. A lot of my mother's family members are buried there. The church itself, my great grandfather built out of slavery. His name is on this wall there. And so when my mother retired, she moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, which is about maybe 2.5 hours from where my mother was born and raised. You know, and I'd go up there and I'd say, Mommy, you want to ride down to, no! She didn't have anything to do. So, and then I found from my other elders in the family, they don't want to talk about it. The history's too painful. You know, they say things like, you don't have to go through that anymore. You don't have to do that, you know. So, that's kind of it.
Tell me about your neighborhood. It was you said in Queens or Brooklyn?
No, I was born in Queens.
Okay.
I was raised in Brooklyn.
Raised in Brooklyn. So tell me about the
Gates
neighborhood, the
Avenue.
community that you grew up in.
Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy.
It was, when I was growing up as a little girl, it was a mixed neighborhood, Irish, Italian, and blacks.
Okay.
A lot of the white people were probably, when I got to be about 14, they pretty much moved a little bit further, going out to suburbia, that kind of, if they didn't go out to suburbia, they at least moved out of that neighborhood. Bed-Stuy eventually became all black, Italian, Caribbean, which it is now. I'm sorry, black, Latino, and Caribbean, which it is now. And like I said, and it was also Jewish when I was coming up.
Mm.
So my mother sent me to a parochial school, Our Lady of Good Counsel, which is about 4 blocks from my house.
You were raised Baptist?
Right. We went to Cornerstone Baptist Church, which was, the pastor there was Reverend Ray. Nice guy, really, really nice. And he kind of like spoiled me for any preacher. You know, he was very into the children, very, you know, he treated us like we were humans.
Mm.
You know, like not little people with no brains. You know, he was a good man like that. So anyway, I went to church on Sunday, to a Baptist church at 11 o'clock, and I went to Catholic church at the 8 o'clock Mass at Our Lady of Good Counsel. I went to parochial school Monday to Friday. I was a good little Catholic girl. And it was kind of how the community did it. You know, I don't think everybody that was Irish or Italian was Catholic, you know, or white or black, you know, but a lot of us went to parochial school because it was the best school that our families could afford. That was it, yeah.
You said that as a community, you were always at war. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
As a African American community.
Of course, you know, when you're a kid, that's the environment you're in. What do you know?
Yeah.
But when I look back to how we lived, you know, the struggle of paying the rent, the struggle. We didn't live in a rent-controlled apartment, so he could go up whatever and hit. You know, he'd roll over in the bed and say, "Oh, I'm gonna raise the rent tomorrow." It pretty much happened, that kind of thing. The piece about I remember my mother wanted to find another. You know, she was looking for another apartment, and I had seen other apartments. You know, because I had friends. You know, you're in school, you see. You know, you're walking down the street, you see the apartment for rent and whatnot. So I never knew what the heck was going on. I mean, there's an apartment right there. What's up? Well, she couldn't get it because it said no Negroes allowed. So that kind of war, I'm talking about that kind of war. If you needed help with food stamps, or, well, when at that time, they used to have, oh God, what did they call? Government packages. You could go get online and you could get online somewhere. I don't remember where. And they would give you, you know, big bags of flour and cornmeal and cheese. Made the best cheese sandwiches in the world. Macaroni, that kind of stuff. You could, you know, and everybody went once a month and got that, you know. But the way they treated you getting it was government surplus food. So I don't even know if I don't know why they don't have that anymore. Because I'd certainly be online, you know, hey, powdered milk, powdered eggs. just the kind of bare necessities that people, need and that they overcharge you for today in the grocery store. Just hey you, come get this. Hey you, that kind of the way they would talk to people. And it wasn't about race. It was like you're poor, so you don't deserve to be called Mr. or Miss or Ma'am or Sir. It wasn't. I never thought it was about race at that time when I was a little girl. I thought it was because we were poor. But as a kid, I thought everybody was poor except the people that gave you the, because you don't come out of your neighborhood. Why? You just live in that community. The only time we went out of the neighborhood is if we went to Coney Island or we went to Atlanta Beach. We used to go up to Indian Point before Con Edison bought it. It's a big park. Or we would go up to Bear Mountain. And I had some Jewish friends that would go away for the summer, and they would go to the Peak Skills, up there, and I knew some of my older friends who had older brothers would go up there, black kids would go up there and work as waiters and things like that. Dishwashers, or they would go out to, I forget now where that place was, go out to the horse track, and they, work with the horses and things like that. I think a lot of people don't know the history of horse racing, and that, your first riders were black, and they were the first riders were black slaves, black male slaves. When it became a lucrative or a different kind of business, then they, of course, got pushed out of those jobs. So, yeah.
Tell me about when you were growing up, the state of the civil rights movement in your neighborhood. Because you said there were those signs for the apartments that said no Negroes.
Right. Yeah, they were. But it was. I guess it was commonplace. When you're a child, you live kind of condensed. This is your little world. You're not really aware of it because it's there. It's like a light post. It's always there. But then when you hear your elders, your parents and your neighbors talking about, I went downtown and they treated me bad, or, I tried to return something and they wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't let me try on shoes in the store. Those kinds of struggles that, black and poor people had at the time. And you go downtown, in Brooklyn anyway, it's not like today. You just slept on downtown. When I was coming up, we used to get dressed. You had to look a certain way to go shopping in the stores, for them to wait on you. And then they still didn't want to treat you nice. So if they didn't treat you nice then, it was race. Because white people look nice because they were dressed. But unless they heard how you spoke, how you articulated something, they were like, oh, that's poor white trash. But if you're black, they just see it right away. Oh, you know what I'm saying? So you had those kinds of struggles that our parents had. And then later, of course, when you got 14, you start looking for a job because you could get your working papers. Well, everybody couldn't wait to get 14. Go out, get a job and get money and, buy everything that you ever thought you wanted. And, you couldn't get a job. Nobody really wanted to hire a 14-year-old girl. And then they didn't want to hire a 14-year-old black girl. So then I had that. One of the first jobs I had was working actually down on Wall Street. And I worked in this restaurant. It was all Irish older women. And this was my first job. It was the first time I was actually taking the train far away from my house. I was a big girl. I was 14 years old. And I couldn't understand why the ladies were so mean to me. You know, I was a kid. I didn't understand why they were so ugly, why they were so mean to me. And, you know, I mean, I didn't know anything about Wall Street and, you know, the stock exchange. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. Still don't know that much about it, really. Why we even have it, it's a matter. And I remember these guys came in, these men, you know, in the suits and whatnot, Wall Street executives, I'm sure, who knows. And they put their order in. And the guy said, the man said, I'd like a cup of cream of vichyssoise. I always remember this. I was 14 years old. He said, I'd like a cup of cream of vichyssoise. And I said, what is that? I had never heard of vichyssoise. What is that? And he just rolled. He thought it was the funniest thing. He said, it's cold potato soup. So I said to him, because I was a kid, I said, is that what your mother calls it? Vichyssoise? He said, no, my mother calls it cold potato soup. So I said, well, why didn't you ask for it? He said, because on the menu it's, you know, cream of vichyssoise soup. So after that, the guys would always come in and they wouldn't have anybody else but me. And they always gave me a nice tip. They always. So one of the guys came in and he said, I say about 2 years, about 16. He said, maybe I was 15 when this happened, maybe I was 16. He said, when you get to be 17, he said, come and see me. He said, I got a job for you. I'll train you. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And I remember this woman named Miss Irene. She was an Irish woman. She had worked in, looking back, when I look at her and I remember her, she must have worked in restaurants all her life. Because it's a hard job. It's a poor paying job. But these women would always keep me in the bathroom crying because they were so mean to me. And I didn't get it. And I remember she came in the bathroom and she said, Louise, she said, let me tell you something. If you let them run you in the bathroom, they'll keep running you and you'll be crying all your life. And she was the one that said to me, outside of my family, she said, they're racist. They don't like you because you're a colored little girl. And I thought, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. You know, because it just didn't make any sense. How could you not like somebody because they were a colored little girl? It didn't make any sense. So she said, you got to get strong. You got to get tough. Well, people run you in the bathroom, you'll be crying all your life. And Miss Irene, I always remember that. I came in that bathroom, it was the meanest little bitch after that. I wouldn't let them talk to me and be mean to me. And I said to them, I said, you can't be mean to me anymore. I'm always going to be colored. You know, because it didn't make any sense that they didn't like me or that they were mistreating me the way they were doing just because I was a colored little girl. It just didn't make sense. And now, 60 years later, it still doesn't make sense. You know, it doesn't. You know, mistreat me or put me in my place because I've done something to you. Because I've done something to you. Because I'm a colored little girl? That didn't make sense.
So that was your first real personal experience with racism?
That was it. That was it. And it changed me. It changed me. It
made you tough.
It took something away from me. You know, because I was a happy little girl. You know, it like put you on the defensive after that. You know, it's like, what, they're not going to like me because I'm, you know, because of the way I look? Because I was taught it was what you said, how you treated people, not how you looked. You know, my mother said, you know, you talk to people the way you want to be talked to. That was her, you know, that was her mantra. The way you want to be treated is the way you treat people. So I was treating people nice. So I couldn't figure them out, you know, because I was too young. Miss Irene, God bless her.
And she was a white woman.
She was an Irish woman, solid Irish. She used to hum this little Gaelic song. You know, when she'd get mad, I always knew she was mad, because then she'd sing it. But she'd hum it. When everybody was like getting on her nerves, I got to realize, oh, she's mad. somebody done did something to her, you know. She was this cute little lady. Yeah.
What I wondered about the civil rights movement. I was thinking that you were 12 in 1955 during the Montgomery bus boycott,
Mm-hmm.
and what impact did the civil rights movement have on you? And of course, there was the '54 decision, the Supreme Court decision. And
Not too much.
Not too
because
much,
I was
okay.
too young to understand it.
Okay.
It didn't it didn't do anything. It didn't change anything. It didn't change anything for me. It may have for my elders. But yeah, I was 12 years old. I was out shooting marbles and playing stickball. It didn't do anything for me. Because I went to the same school. We, did the same whatever. But how it affected my parents, I don't know. They didn't talk about that.
When did you start actually being an activist and going in marches and protests and things like that?
My mother took me to 125th Street down to, I want to say Abyssinian Baptist Church, which was the church of Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, Sr. That was his dad's church, and he was the senator, congressman. And at the time, I didn't know, it was this whole thing that was going on in Congress, and, he was supposed to have done this or said this, but it was all adult talk. But I was going because it was going to be a parade. And then I was in the parade. We were marching up and down the street, singing, and, some Christians, I'm sorry, it was a Christian movement.
What year was this?
I don't know, just before Adam Clayton died, before he came out of Congress. They were trying to put him out of Congress. I don't remember the year. I'm bad with years.
Okay.
But it was the year that the protest was because they were trying to put Reverend Adam Clayton Powell out of Congress. And I don't remember what year that was. But that was like my first really remembering, being on a march and carrying a plaque, and, everybody was singing and, protesting, and, my mother said, that's his, that's something like, that's the great hazel sky. Like I know. I remember saying that though. And of course years later I realized that she was a great pianist and she was his wife and all this kind of stuff. But back in the day I was just glad to be on the demonstration. I didn't even know it was a demonstration. I thought it was a parade, to tell you the truth. And so, then you hear people talk. And then you hear them say, it was because he was, back in the day it was all because he was a black man. So I don't know what the politics was, but a lot of it was, if this had been a white man, this wouldn't have happened. If this had been a white man, this wouldn't have happened. That's what I remember hearing. I'm sure there was more to it, but he was big. He was big for his day as a black man in Congress, and they just didn't want to have it. When you look back in history and you read about it as an adult, you see, oh no, they were not ready for him. They were not ready for him.
Now, after that, did you get involved in other civil
Yeah,
rights
sure.
actions? Tell us about that.
After that, the school teachers, New York City at that time when I was growing up, most of the school teachers were Jewish. And I used to know the president of the union, Jewish guy. And he was always pulling the teachers out. Oh, we're going on a strike, But 20 kids in this classroom, but we're going on a strike, He was always, we loved him because kids were always out of school. It was like, ooh, yay. And I remember going to a teacher demonstration in Manhattan with some friends. And I don't even remember what the demonstration was about, except that we were pulled out of school. There's not going to be any school because he's pulled that, teachers not, and that was I didn't know anything about it. I just went to, it was a big demonstration. Teachers might have been yelling for, more money or less kids in school. But I remember, I can't think of his name now, but he had a lot of power. It seems to me, looking back, that he had a lot of power, a lot of strength, that he supported the teachers union. Now, I don't know the history of the man. And another rally I went to was, what was his name? Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. I think he was a bishop of Brooklyn or New York or something. But I had this black teacher. I went to PS 129 later on because I didn't finish at LA Good Council, but I went to PS 129, which is on the other. I went to Catholic school one way and public school the other way. And I remember her name. She introduced herself. She said, "My name is Mrs. Fitch, Fitch. I remember that until Dad died. And she said, she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to another adult, a teacher, I guess. And we happened to be in a hallway, I guess. And she said, "Did you hear what he said?" And she was talking about Bishop Sheen. And he had made this terrible statement about black and poor children and how there really wasn't any, it was like he was saying there was no place for us on earth. But the Catholic Church was doing its duty to make a place for us. And there was a demonstration against him in New York. And so a lot of the teachers right after class went. And me and my friends got on the train right behind him and went. And that was a demonstration that I had gone to because he had made this kind of statement. I didn't understand the whole statement, but I understood enough to know that it was wrong. That the earth wasn't his. I understood that part. Even though I lived in a very small segment of Brooklyn, I understood the piece about the earth didn't just belong to him. He couldn't say that I had no right to be on it. That was kind of it.
What did Martin Luther King mean to you?
Can we pause a sec?
Yep.
It is. And you're ready to go whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So tell me about the impact of Martin Luther King on yourself, your community, your activism.
Well, I think for my community, the elders in my community, Dr. King was someone that they're waiting for. They wait for Dr. King. Part of my community was waiting for Dr. King, and the other part was waiting for Minister Malcolm X. So those two played a pivotal role in the black community as well as the white community. A lot in the white community was negative, but in the black community, it was very positive. Dr. King came out of the traditional Baptist, conservative kind of, that was his background. Malcolm came sort of from the Marcus Garvey, but a little bit more political. A little bit more demanding, than Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey tried to circumvent white America. We're not going to even bother with him. We're just going to gather up money, get this boat, go back to Africa. Malcolm was, we ain't going nowhere. And white people be damned. Like Nina said, Mississippi be damned, white people be damned. And so for a lot of the conservative blacks, a lot of black people who had not really been on the demonstration line, but had been in the front of the struggle in that they had been victims of the struggle. That's who Dr. King was. Now, as a young woman, I was, impressed. I looked at TV. I had 3 children at the time. I was watching people get beaten up and stuff like that. It was all on TV. It was front page. It's like every night all you saw was people being hosed down, beaten up, dogs, and this and that. So I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to go and march and demonstrate and whatnot. And my mother was willing to keep the kids. So, and I had been practicing, over at Hunter College, how to put my hand.
Tell me about that. So when did you go to Hunter College?
Well,
there's the training in civil disobedience.
Right, and I went with with Reverend Jerome Nadine, and he was the first and only black Catholic priest I never met. And of course, all the young girls were in love with him. He was a handsome dude. He really was. But he later left and joined the Air Force, which he's recently, a couple years retired. But anyway, so Reverend Glamiston at Siloam Baptist Church was also having training and whatnot. So I would go on Saturdays to Hunter College. And we'd practice and, put our hands on their heads and have people spit at you and all that. Even then, I kind of knew that wasn't for me. But I figured I could do it, what the hell. And then at Shalom Baptist Church with Reverend Glamister, I could bring the kids. I had a daycare. So then, we'd practice and whatnot. But you know what? Somewhere in the back of my head, I thought, I'm probably not really going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to take all that spitting and cursing and kicking. But I thought I could. What the heck? So we get on a bus, a couple of buses, and we're going down to Delaware and South Shores, that's Eastern Shores. I'm sorry, we're going to the Eastern Shores down there with Miss Richardson and a couple other people who were demonstrating on the Eastern Shore. So we get as far as the Delaware Memorial Bridge. I always remember this. They'll bury me with this. We get to the bottom of the bridge. And we're singing all the freedom songs that we had learned. We shall overcome, we shall not be moved. Oh, we're from New York, we ain't taking this. And, no, we won't be turned back. We get to the bottom of the bridge, and as we're coming down to the bottom of the bridge, I hear the bus driver and the rest of the folks up front say, "Holy cow! Patrol cars just blocking the bridge." They take the bus and we go around to this isolated spot. So everybody get off the bus. We get off the bus. As we get off, they're hitting us with sticks and I don't know what else, batons, whatever they had in their hand. They're hitting us, So then they make us get back on the bus, and they're hitting us getting on the bus. So I was a young girl, and I was a lot lighter than I am. So I really looked like I had been through the battle royal. I was all black and blue by the time we got back to New York. So get back to New York and Hunter late that Saturday afternoon. And I was like, "No, no way. I'm not doing this." It just boggled my mind, I guess. So I get on the train and I go up to Harlem and I get off the train. There's this guy, brother, selling incense. He's standing right at the train. He's selling these incense. I get off the train. I'm really mad because I'm black and blue. And I hadn't done anything to anybody. I said, "Where's the Panther Party?" He says, he looked at me and he said, "I get on the train and go up to Hunters Point." I get up, went on the train, went up to Hunters Point. And so I want to join the Panthers. And they're like looking at me. Eyes black and blue. I looked horrible. So I guess I officially joined the Panther Party. And it was the first time in my life that I understood sexism. What I know. And I didn't know what it was though. I was like, why are we all just doing all the washing the dishes and cleaning up, and the guys were like conferring and thinking, strategizing and planning, and we were in there feeding the kids and waiting on them hand and foot. Hey, I want, any more of this done or any, and when we went out to march around the community, we're up in the Bronx then. When marching around the community, we were the ones that had to take care of the kids, but we were also the ones that, like, we were carrying the equipment. You know, we were like lugging this shit up the street and shopping carts and baby carriages. And we couldn't say anything. They were defending the community, and they were defending women, and they were defending the children. And nobody asked me what I wanted to be defended. Nobody said, you know, like, what is it that you want? They were making all the choices, at least in that particular branch of the party that I was in. And it was, we can't work with white people. We can't, you know, nobody white can be trusted. No one, nobody, no matter what part of the earth they were on. And I knew that wasn't true because I had white friends. You know, kids I grew up with, kids I went to school with, I played basketball with, I played in the streets, you know, stickball and marbles. So, and I was working. So, and I worked with white people. Yeah, I got on the subway. Nobody tried to beat me up on the subway, you know, and tried to mug me, take my money, but it's another story. And so I didn't get it. So I hung out with them for about a year, I think. About a year. And I knew that was not it for me. That was not, I understood where they were going, but I couldn't articulate it. That was not it for me. That was not how I was gonna do it. I didn't know how I was gonna do it.
The bus that you were on your way to the
we were on our way to a demonstration in on the eastern shore of Virginia.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, with Mr. Richardson and
okay.
I can't think of the other people's name down there.
Okay. Because I was thinking that you were on your way to the National March in
the Pettus Bridge?
1963.
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. So what
No.
do you have? Do you remember what year that was, or about when that was?
That had to be around the same time.
Around 63.
Yeah, that had to be.
Yeah.
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 Because that had to be because marches were going
Right.
on all over the country.
Right.
You know,
right.
so that had to be. I guess that by that time.
So then you were part of the Panthers for like
maybe a year.
Yeah, until through 64 or something like that. And then Malcolm X was assassinated in 65.
And that was just before Malcolm died, though, just before he was killed. The whole thing with the movement, with the Islamic movement, you know, Elijah Muhammad, and but they were very strong in our community. We're very, the Muslims are very strong even today. They're very strong in prisons. Black men, you know, you can always tell a Muslim brother who came out of that movement, and it's still. Some of them have evolved into other things, but there's a thing about them. There's something about them that you can tell. They're still, you know, they had that dignity. They were able to achieve a certain dignity that no other organization seemed to have been able to give them. So you see that. Even when I worked in the prison system, I saw brothers who, you know, had literally been street men for years and became Muslims, and totally different. So it was easy to understand how Minister Malcolm was able to turn and how they were able to get his attention, you know what I'm saying? He was already a smart man, you know, but there was no place to take that.
Mm.
And Elijah Muhammad and them were able to take that. And then, of course, he outgrew that, you know. But I remember, it was really interesting, Harlem, huge boulevard. The boulevard is, what's it like, four, maybe 6 lanes, 4 big lanes anyway. And when I was growing up and living in New York, most of the buildings were owned by Jews. Most of your grocery stores, furniture stores, clothing stores, shoe stores, all that. You know, black people owned very little in Harlem. They lived in Harlem, and then the white people that owned stuff in Harlem. They'd board it up at night and go home to their communities. And so the community started to hear from Malcolm that these people were raping them. They're taking their money from you, but they're not spending it back in your community. They're taking it somewhere else. And Malcolm would walk down the street with a wooden milk box. I always remember this. And he just walked down on Saturday, and people would be shopping, you know, all up and down the street. All these stalls would be out, vegetable stores, chairs, you know, anything that, you know, you needed to survive was out on the sidewalk. People were selling. And he, you know, music would be playing and whatnot. And he'd walk down the street. He'd just take that milk box and he'd just drop it like that. And he'd get up and he'd start talking in the middle of the street. And people were facing the stores. They'd turn around and they'd listen. And there, of course, were other auditors out there, you know. The you know, repent right now because, you know, the earth is coming to an end any second, you know, all this kind of stuff. But he would start talking and people would listen. People would listen. People would turn around. Yeah, brother, you're right. You know, you're right. You're right. You know, and then on Sunday, up in Harlem anyway, they'd go up to the churches, you know, the black churches. What did your white God give you today? You know, they'd start, you know, people get upset, you know. I said, what'd you get at church today? How much money did you give to church? How much money did that preacher got? You know, he driving that Cadillac, you know. But he was dynamic. I remember when...
So you knew him before he was Malcolm X, kind of. I mean, you knew him when he was like a nobody, right?
He was Malcolm X.
But you knew him when he was kind of like unknown. When he wasn't.
No, we knew him. The white community didn't know him. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't
Right.
perceived as a
Right.
threat.
What I mean is, you knew him before he really became well known, before he became famous.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
he was always in the streets talking.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so it's like, you know, just kind of there. And
Did you know him personally?
no, I mean, you know, I wasn't going to be a Muslim, so I really wasn't going to know him. I wasn't going to wear my hair, you know, my head, you know, I wasn't going to do any of that. I never wanted to live like that. I certainly respected them. I had a lot of respect for those sisters. Because one of the reasons, though, is because I always thought they were part of the oppressed community. And now they were doubly oppressed, you know, because they were all clothed up and, you know, they had to be subservient to this man, and I knew that wasn't going to happen in my life. So, you know, and I understood. I couldn't articulate it, but I knew that I wasn't a nationalist. I was for the liberation struggle, wherever it was, whoever was fighting to be free and have their own independence and live as a people in their own way. I was for that. But I wasn't for me. I knew I didn't want to live separate from the larger community. So I knew that must have meant that I wasn't a nationalist. I knew that part. I remember when I was in Harlem when Comrade Fidel Castro came to Harlem. That was the biggest thing that happened to black people since, I don't know. It was one of the major things that happened for us. There was this man who was able to take a country that was black and Cuban, you know, Afro-Cuban, and tell the United States, kiss off. We're going to live as our own people, you know, nationalize their banks and throw out the gamblers. And, you know, Cuba was known as the playground for America. And, you know, people talk, oh, you know, Fidel, he did this, he did that, he took away Cuba. Fidel was just a part of the revolution. You can't have a revolution with one person. You got to have people that want it. They wanted that revolution. They wanted a different way of life. And I remember, you know, all the diplomats, they don't come to Harlem. Last place they would think about. Fidel came to Harlem, you know. This is like the greatest leader for black people. Whether you were for socialism, communism, whether you believed in any of that, the fact was this was a man that came who led a revolution, that put you in mind of Haiti. The Haitian Revolution. And this man came and, he's standing on the balcony and he's saying, compañeros, 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 viva la Cuba. The people just lost their mind. Just absolutely lost their mind. A friend of mine, Comrade Monica, she said, the greatest thing, black sister, she said, the greatest thing she heard was Comrade Fidel said, and nobody had ever validated us like this. He said, Spain gave us our language, but Africa gave us our culture. And, you couldn't help support someone like that, because that was their belief. They acknowledged the fact that the two made this culture. So I remember that.
So I was thinking you were about 16. That was probably 1959. So that'd make you probably very impressionable too. It was you were just like a total neophyte.
It was incredible.
So, yeah.
It was out. No one ever said that. No one.
Right.
And the whole thing about it, if you're in Manhattan and you're going past some of those big hotels, you almost felt like you should be dressed. And this man rejected that.
Yeah.
He came from the United Nations, with his entourage and all the security. Because the U.S. doesn't want Fidel to get killed in the United States. The last thing they want. They would do everything. I mean, if Fidel got hurt here, it would be like the second coming. They would have so many doctors to make sure that he lived to get back to Cuba. So the U.S., all the Secret Service, all the cars, and they're following this guy thinking they're going probably down to, Waldorf Astoria or somewhere, wherever they got the diplomats. Hotel Teresa. And see him coming down, People just were like, holy cow. I mean, people lost their mind. I mean, you see him coming off the bridge and all these cars, the Cuban flag, and, police, the sirens, and he comes up and he gets on the balcony and, compañeros, compañeros. Oh, man, viva la Cuba. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And
what did you do after that? After that experience, I mean, did you get involved in anything particular?
I want to say, and I'm a little confused with my date. One of the major streets in Brooklyn was Fulton Street. So it had all these old and whatnot, and for some reason or other they decided to tear it down and build. So one of the things they built was a theater. And one of my friends said to me out of the blue, she said, every time I turn around, you hear about Bobby Kennedy's wife is roller skating in, Bed-Stuy, roller skating in. Okay. So anyway, they built the theater, and they wanted to name it the Sarah Bernhardt, I think it is. Is it Sarah Bernhardt? I think it was the Sarah Bernhardt. We were like, what? No way in hell that's going to happen. So we started organizing, and we said, this is going to be the Billie Holiday Theater. This is not keep her uptown, where we can't go. And so we had this big rally demonstration, march down there. And they had the marquee out, and they were like, no, not here. That goes somewhere else. It's not in this neighborhood. But, and one of the brothers, he yelled out, he said, Billy, let me spell it for you. Start spelling her name. Billie Holiday, Lady Day. And all of a sudden, for me anyway, and like all these cops showed up and security people showed up. We were like, okay, what's up? Well, the Kennedy wife, oh God, what was her name?
Ethel.
Ethel was in there whatever the hell she was doing, you know. So they were afraid that, you know, this white woman couldn't be in this atmosphere where all these black people were, and the few white people were, and Chinese people were. We had to get her out back to. So, you know, it's kind of that. It's kind of that.
Let me, before we get into Stonewall, when did you actually get married?
Oh, I was 17.
You're 17.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as far as you knew, you were heterosexual?
Yeah. I was in love with him. He could sing. He
Oh.
could harmonize. He'd sit on a stoop and harmonize.
So you married him because he could sing?
Yeah, he could sing. He was
So tell me about your husband. What was his name? Who was he? What did he do?
Not really.
Oh, you don't want to talk about that?
Not really.
Okay, that's fine.
It's
That's
just too close.
fine. Okay, so you got married when you were 17, and then you had 3 girls. Like,
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Right, one right after the other. Right.
God, yeah. I got pregnant with after I had my last baby, and I was working at my Maimonides Hospital, and I don't want to talk about Gil right now. Just got to talk to his mother. She's still taking it hard as death, and just brought up a lot of stuff for me. But anyway, so I got pregnant again, like after Stephanie. I was working at my Maimonides Hospital in oh God, where was it? Anyway, in Brooklyn.
Tell me when your kids were born. What do you remember?
60, 61 to 63.
Okay, 60, 61, 63.
Right,
Okay,
right,
okay,
yeah.
right, yeah. Okay.
Right. As a matter of fact, Stephanie was just born when Kennedy was killed, 1963, November 1960. She was born November 8th, and he was killed a couple of days later. I was nursing her. A friend called and told me, she was crying, Camelot is dead. And I thought, who the hell is Camelot? What are you talking about? Estelle Boyce, always remember that. I was like, Estelle, you need to stop.
It's tea time.
Are we stop?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 9:30.
Great. All these stories.